So I started thinking about what's going on here. I've been discussing the currents. I added this. I noticed. I was like, wait a minute. Let's go back to Gardnar. So in my previous video-ish, I discussed how there's like a vortex due to an energy coming in here, causing a rotation, and then also another rotation here. But down here, this region, like this here, I was like, well, based on these flow patterns that I've drawn, there should be a flow coming in here that's kind of colliding with the flow coming out this way. Like this thing is putting a flow this way, which is creating this barrier. But down here, it should kind of run into this little like triangular patch. So I found it really interesting that this region is a little more like built up looking in terms of like it looks more like a pile, like over here. These are kind of like piles, that, according to the interpretation that I've been putting forth. This is kind of like a pile, but this little segment is kind of like those segments more than the other portions of Gardnar. So that's really promising that I initially put a triangle here, like the flow pattern suggested, and then I drew a triangle here. If you don't believe me, you can just look at my flow patterns that I had in the previous video and be like, yeah, that would indicate there'd be a triangle there. Okay. And then I looked at the map, I was like, there's a triangle there. Good sign. So with that in mind, okay, so I've been looking at this area, but it occurred to me like this is not visible, very like perhaps at all here in the in the magnetic anomalies, which are essentially more like MOHO depth of their point of origin, because there's a current flowing between the boundaries of the crust and mantle due to this puncture in the MOHO. So it's probably on top of the MOHO and becoming part of the crust. So the MOHO stays the MOHO, the boundary between the two, but like the mantle material moves on top of the MOHO. Kind of like a volcano would emit like gas into the atmosphere and throughout the entire atmosphere, rather than just like a volcano, which can have like some portions maybe still like under stuff. Like the gas pretty well is emitted to the atmosphere, and then it's on top of the crust. Like the crust behaves like the MOHO to the gas. In the same or similar way, not gaseous, but a similar way, this layer flowed beyond the MOHO, I think, and then just on the MOHO. But over here, there's really not much going on, and I'm like, well, I've been drawing these currents to the point where like maybe not every single detail, especially this region, is a little complex here, is like for sure worked out. Let's look over here for a second. It looks like a current is maybe coming around here too. Maybe that's participating in this current, like emanating from here, like a collision. Because I was just saying like there was a particle here, but maybe the particle here was partly like induced by a cross current. Okay. So I realized this is really surface currents. And I'm like, how is that? Why are there surface currents here, but there's subsurface currents usually? And I'm like, oh yeah, This is Deccan Traps. So, like, usually there's not a large igneous province with a vortex storm moving atop it. So maybe this region would show the like more surface currents than like kind of like a hand where the chakras are would would show at least some chakras would show the surface currents more readily than like somewhere they just weren't. There wasn't a storm like here. Like there's stuff going on and maybe surface currents, but it's not as readily apparent as here, where there's like collisions of surface currents that are boundaries that look like lightning strikes coming at one another. And just the whole region, it really is like exceptionally surface currenty. So I think it's because it first of all was a large igneous province. So let's look at this. Deccan Traps. So like this is my thoughts, is the storm is moving this way. And then down here, if this loads, I guess that's the best it's got. It's the best quality that one's got. Maybe here. Well, Gujarat, India. The storm comes, I believe, here and then this way, and then it's, yeah, this way, and then it starts separating it. Let's go to here. One of them. There it is. Pardon the tabs everywhere, even in Photoshop. Oh, God. This mouse wheel. Mouse wheel! Okay. That's pretty good. So the storm comes this way, and then this way, and it causes a separation between the polygons. And then it keeps going this way. So, like, this is probably where the upwelling, this actually boundary makes sense now for Deccan Traps, because this is where the upwelling of material is probably focused from Gurnar and just flooding out, but also from the fault lines flooding out, creating just this plane that is then being like distributed by over the storm that is moving atop the region. So it then fans according to the storm. So the storm over here brings it towards it. So it starts just splattering it out. And then it does down this way as well. Undo what I just did. To pretty much just fan it out. I'm thinking like this, maybe like just fanned it out to this region, maybe up to there, maybe down here a bit. But like it's because of this storm passing through, causing currents that are then moving just massive quantities of lava, like magma, basalt emissions from the earth by this large igneous province emission occurring that then fans out. I guess it goes around that sink, like this thing. Does it? It doesn't seem to go there. That's probably that. I'm not sure. Or maybe that's over here. It doesn't seem to go up this way. So it really only happens once it passes this boundary right here. Interesting. Because over here, the storm is moving, and it's just putting ether energy, subtle, just like currents from the cosmos, because it's essentially a vortex opening a column to the earth that allows like space to flow in, literally. actual, like, the cosmos, space, like, but space, like, it's space, it brings space in, causes the earth to swell from the actual contained space. So it flows through here due to the currents, though, and it's just ether. It's subtle particles that are not combined, but are just subtle and in massive quantities. Kind of like how this is less dense than like a mountain. Like Mount Everest is going to be Mount Everest longer than like this pile is going to be this pile. They're just subtle and in much quantity, so they move around easily. They change, they're malleable, but they flowed through the earth, puncturing the mantle, the moho boundary through it, and then filled the inner earth with space in a way, with this ether flowing through there. But it was flowing into the earth there, causing this upwelling that just flowed out of the earth in all directions. But then while it's moving over here, it's like connecting the two, so creating like a channel from Mount Gurnar to this thing energetically, that then allows for the storm as it moves to continue to draw energy into the earth, because it needs somewhere for the energy to go, and the earth inside the earth is like with this puncture hole and just this gushing mantle allowing space for it. It essentially flows in there, but the mantle is flowing out, and then it's flowing along like boundary lines. So probably omitted here in this region, where this polygon boundary is. It started to emit just like through these things, and while it's emitting, the ether is flowing, like it's physically flowing through it. So this is a good time to pull up this map. It's flowing like this. The structures of the Deccan traps are being caused with these currents flowing along them of ether to be structured in ways where, like, if I pull up actual images of the Deccan traps, they look like current flows. Like, if you could picture this in 3 dimensions, like with different layers, just current flows, all of this. And then Deccan traps. This one especially shows it, if we can find a good image of it. This one shows it, this one shows it. You can see the currents right there, right here, just the way the structures are. This is caused by currents. All of this is currents that are just like flowing around. So there's like a nucleus here to a particle for sure. That's like the heart of one of these that's having these energy flows into it. Whereas this one, it's flowing out of it. So this is probably more like a void created. Or vice versa, like where it's flowing in, it's ether, and that's creating a downward like depression into the region that then flows physically down into the earth. This right here is pretty well representative, or this right here, how it's a closed system. Is very representative of, I think it's a lot, this one maybe? Nope. It's gotta be that. Yeah, this one, this closed system. Because there's a current for sure coming this way. For sure. There's a current for sure coming this way. Although, maybe I'm mistaken. Oh, maybe it's flowing here and meeting a boundary, creating a boundary, but it's like in order to create the boundary, it has to upwell. So this is actually coming out this way. These ones. Maybe. That might actually be the case. I just assumed there was like a current coming in here. This one I kind of assumed. This structure, this rotation this is clear. This one's a little less clear, but I feel confident about it based on the surrounding details. Even these currents flow in though, so it must have inflows. So these probably are in. They do tap in. Now that I think about it, they do physically connect from like singular. Like this. Like it's not coming out of Mount Gurnar as a single thread, it's entering Mount Gurnar as multiple like fingers, which is usually from like Himalayas, for instance, from an energy flow from the north into the south, creating these like finger outward branching dendrites that are here. They're visible also branching from the nucleus of Africa when this was all happening, feeding across here into here between. Essentially, it went between the continents as an opening happened while the South America was feeding into Africa. It went around the continents in this way. And then it just like did the same thing where it starts to branch out, and then where it makes contact, it just overlays the mountains with these like dendrite structures. Just the entire mountain range is just overlaid with dendrite structures that are like tapping energetically in to create balance. So it is probably a flow into Mount Gurnar. I mean, it must be two flows, like an upwelling and an inwelling of just like the ether gas, ether space, and the outwelling of Gurnar. Okay, so that's good. That's good that this is. I was gonna put it with a big question mark over it, but I think it's okay. But back to the Deccan traps. So they're emitting, which then this storm is moving along, causing a current in the emissions coming especially out of Gujarat, I guess. Maybe it's because it's like above the puncture, like energetically, this current moves this way and upwelled here. And so as the storm moves this way, maybe the storm's even like drawing it along, more than likely causing it to thread in the direction of the storm. Like the storm comes here, and so it starts to just open it, but then it starts moving away. Maybe once it opens, there's a pressure pushing the storm away. Like here, it's hanging out, but then the mantle boundary is punctured, and so it just starts moving away from that center, just directly to, just straight away. But it gets caught up on this, and so it just carves through. This was what was once connected, like polygon, in the same way this was connected, and this was connected. Like these were all connected across, but this storm carved channels this way, here, 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 and just cause currents through this region to really just like create this. But then it carved through here, and then it got down to this point where like it went between more substantial polygons. Like there's ever larger polygons on Earth, to the point where they become continents and beyond, probably. Like for sure, continents are like polygons that were like stable as single structures. More so than like if they had stayed like Gujarat, India could be over here hanging out, but like it was more stably part of India, so it ended up being here. Whereas like this segment could have been here, but it was more stably part of the Arabian Peninsula. So they're separated. Same way there's a boundary here between like more substantial polygons that once it reached it, I guess, allowed for like just an upwelling, like wing, like it's coming up, coming up, coming up, and then ramps up here through this polygon where it starts to come up through. And then the storm is just creating a current on the surface of the polygon. It doesn't even reach over here very much. This is mostly carved by these currents probably, but like the current flowing on the surface here probably didn't quite influence this peninsula, this nose, this beak. I mean, we can just see the currents. It's crazy that just in the this whole region, like the Himalayas too, you can see the currents based on like where certain materials were left behind and where other materials were. So like things grow on certain currents. Look at all the greenery on these currents. All the not greenery on those, because it was separated, this process with current flows like this, it causes separation, which is why Mount Gurnar is not like a single material. It's genuinely a separated inner hexagon with an outer hexagon with an inner triangle with two rings because of the rotation. Just causing like different portions to be different portions. Maybe none of these currents are quite good to represent the like a hexagon with a center and all that. Anything that's Mount Gurnar, it really would take a good current to probably get the like really good current. Like let's say the pole of Saturn, like a good current. This one even has an inner hexagon, I believe. Just inner structures, literally galaxies low, like it is. That's the cool thing. um, let's see. Sorry, Mom. Love you. Cool, little peace sign. Little peace sign. Is that a legitimately natural peace sign formed at the pole of Saturn? Or is this some kind of study or something? I gotta see. Get access. Access through your institution. Be affiliated with one of us who agree to follow the system. Sir, yes, sir. Anything else? Buy print. Let's see. Let's see. What are we trying to get to casually look at something? Oh, that's it. $163. That's reasonable. That certainly won't prevent the free flow of information, guys. Oh, God. Well, it looks like maybe there's a peace sign. If there was free flow of information, like high currents, peace can maybe come. But if you guys, prevent currents from flowing like this, like nothing specific to the institute, because this is just a systemic thing we do, because we're all trying to get our cut. And that's why I'm failing so miserably, because I'm not. I mean, sure, I'm selling shit, so there's that. Like, I have a book, but guess what? It's right here. And I don't say free, because I know it's not really free. Like, I get accolades, I get maybe titles and all sorts of things. And all sorts of things. Maybe you should really look into it before, like, fully supporting me. But also, at the same time, like, I really am like a person dying in a corner. Because I give away information, people are like, oh, now I have it, so I won't even pay for it. And also, I've judged it because you gave it away for free, and also you're not following the system. So like, you're putting writings like what is this poetry? Okay, whatever, dude. Research papers. Okay, so where's your peer reviewed? I can't do it myself. I need someone else to do it for me. Where is your peer reviewed? Okay, they did it. They did it. No, no one did it because no one's willing to, because everyone's like and then they look at you like this. They're like, oh, okay, he's one of those, not even knowing. They don't know shit about fuck. Oops. Lord. Because I was atheist. If I saw this when I was 20, although I probably would have been like, alright, this dude knows what he's talking about. Because it's just classical mechanics. It's just, I'm so deeply into it at this point. Like, I'm not even talking about this. I don't even talk about this anymore. This is the theory of everything. And consciousness, all sorts of things. Really shows the earth definitely expanded. I mean, model wrong, but Lord. I don't think I've changed much of the physics yet, although the earth has really opened up my eyes to how physics works recently through this, all of this. So maybe if I revisit it, I can have some breakthroughs honestly. Maybe I'll share them, maybe I won't. If I can live that long, I'm like, that's a problem. I might need to just turn around. But like, I have a shop, so people are like, oh. Meanwhile, going and fucking serving this system that's gonna kill us all, you fucking idiots. No offense. I guess same. Because look at what I just did. Maybe I'll do the same. I mean, I do think that I might realize the earth is doomed and shoot Mercury into a supernova. Like it seems like a plausible like thread that connects things. You know, all these great accolades and titles. I mean, I don't want them, but they'll be there. But at the same time, I also that one. Meanwhile, on Spaceship Gurnar, like meditating, I was just thinking maybe like at the end, like to protect Gurnar as a spaceship Gujarat launches off into Venus to be at its core as the seed that there'd be like a group of meditating people holding the fort down, keeping like a magnetic field to protect it as it flies through space, directing its motions. Being a spaceship, maybe that's all a spaceship is. Just getting on a particle and meditating its magnetic field into moving. On its platform. I don't know. I'm just not being serious. Okay. So I do think this is, but we're on to something with this deck and traps, though. That it was first of all, it was being formed by emissions, which is pretty well established, of course, that it's a large igneous province, but that those emissions were not just a large igneous province; they were also a large igneous province with a vortex storm traveling atop it. And so that storm influenced the outcome of the map, especially where the emissions were most coming from the mantle boundary with the crust through the crust to the surface. Like it's not always going to the surface. Here, it's able to make it to the surface. So it's around la la la. And this storm is traveling this way, putting currents this way and into Gujarat, which then are causing the emissions of this large igneous province to be moved around like water. So that's why it's like water here, because it really is like a liquid magma. It's a large igneous province being emitted, which is then being moved by the storm to shape it this way. Feeling pretty good about that. And here a current was flowing along the boundary. So that's why it looks like currents, because it really was. Like there was a current flowing here along the polygon's boundary. Let's look at a polygon. It's best to see them in the ocean because they're not filled a lot of times. This is one that's just broken up, like the portion of the up here, these polygons that got broken apart by the current and just the doom shape, this vortex, which is what it was called, coming through it. But we can see like the corner here, it kind of has like a supporting, like this extension. So these tab things are like supporting pillars, I guess. So like this is more of a complete polygon that has channels, inlets, and outlets. Probably just floating like this. And maybe somehow it comes out here. I don't know. I guess if it's flowing in here, maybe separating this way and then going this way and running into this and kind of ultimately pushing out this way. I don't know. Some things of that nature where there's a polygon though, but let's go to some that are filled over here. like by the photoelectric effect when the photons, empty photons came in and they bounced off of all these empty photons that would have bounced off of the energy, but the Earth stopped expanding, so they're just sitting there. Coming down here, and they hit this wall of energy here that when they bounce off it, they take parts of Fiji. This one even looks like it left a trail, so maybe they aren't exactly taking Fiji, just like the surrounding material is being encapsulated like here. So it starts to encapsulate this here, but it doesn't fill it. But then like this, I think this is Samoa. Samoa is packed to the brim, so we can only see the polygon at all in some locations in these ones. This is also Samoa. This one even we can see where it was like having material inserted into it, so it's almost like the polygon just tapped into a greater body that had like a more pressure. Potentially like this, like right here, and then like by putting pressure on this polygon's boundary causes it to outflow there. So over here, similar things going on, where there's a polygon that is here, like a larger polygon, that is Gujarat, India, basically. That then the currents flowed along the boundaries because there's just like a bit more material, so it has like an indentation at the boundary, a wall. So it kind of like directs the currents around the polygons. It would be crazy if this was actually like an ocean at the time, and like it used to be like an island, and that's why it's filling like this. Like it was an island polygon that just got filled by an ocean of magma. That would be crazy. Although I don't think that's the case, but that would be crazy. So, where was I? Deccan traps. Yeah, so they have a current flowing across them. This magma's coming out and shaping it. They're being shaped by the current. And then it's coming over here, so it's limited for sure then by this boundary. That's why it's not up here, like there's not Deccan traps here. Which will, if we look into Siberian traps and the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province and other ones that probably in Australia, I'd imagine in Australia, with the amount of supernovas underneath it. Just a ring of novas creating a spiraling effect. Let's just go look at it real quick. It used to be the core, like this entire body here used to be with a center, a nucleus, its outer shell. But then these currents got into the shell and flowed around the nucleus and just stripped it apart and created this spiraling out until it's basically separated these segments from Australia and had the new nucleus with the continental crust resting on it. So that kind of thing happens. I don't know why I was talking about it anymore. So Deccan traps. Da, da, da. I mean, this one's insane. It's just clear as day currents flowed. I know if we, that's what geology does. It says time plus erosion plus coincidence. It's a hand wave versus an actual explanation of there were currents flowing, and here they are. See the trails they made. I bet we could continue this down to the finest of details and be like, there were currents flowing. Like, in the same way as we can kind of like go to here, zoom out. Like, we can see there's currents flowing, but then we can zoom in. Oh, look at all those currents flowing. Oh, look at those currents flowing. Oh, look at those currents flowing. I'm really like, oh, look at that. And just see the currents flowing in a like mapped out way in the Deccan Traps, and really see like the galactic nature of it, even how cool it is in its currents flowing, or that were flowing. How cool it is to be aware of this. How cool it is. Pardon me. Maybe a little dark. Shalagram. Like, Okay. So for sure, I feel confident it's like largely being emitted here and then just swept out by the storm this way. Also, the storm, when it discharged, created this in the ocean. So I think before this region opened, this was actually more like here, maybe even right there. Like, maybe that's a little bit of it left behind. I don't know. But generally, when it discharged, it had like a phi ratio arm that happened to be over the still like pretty much freshly released ocean crust that was able to be shaped by any sudden bursts of energy. So it discharged here and discharged here, and then it filled in space to widen this, to fan it out. And so now it's over here, but the discharge was over here. So it was kind of like that. I would strongly suggest, at least. I haven't like absolutely looked at the data to like make it unequivocally certain. Like, it does suggest to be the older material and the newer over here, which does make sense. So maybe I'm mistaken. Why would it be that far out? That's what's just confusing. Like, why is it so far out? Like, was it that big? Maybe it goes like this and spirals this way, and then like this or something. Because what? There's not really any Deccan Traps here, but maybe it didn't need Deccan Traps. Like, this was really only caused because the magma was being released from the mantle puncture hole, which was flowing out here, but like, it probably wasn't actually flowing out here. But it looks like that makes sense for what's going on here. Like, maybe the band of this storm was really like that, like a bar galaxy. and creating sort of like just a lot of material concentrating below it as it was funneling through and holding stuff there energetically. Like, so maybe, because this area is a little confusing. Like, what's this about? It's probably some sort of particle. It looks like it has triple spiral, maybe. Yeah, they're flowing this way, generally speaking. Oh, look at that. It even carved channels by the winds. Precambrian, this stuff. This is what was emitted from here, getting this like sprayed out through this region. Although why is it not really there? I don't know. If the storm's here, it really should be making some over here too. Is any of this is there igneous Oman? Igneous province at all? Oman. Why would that be the top resort? I guess maybe there's just none. There's just none in Oman. Let's see what's up here. I need like a good pixel map. Definitely nothing in Oman area. Um, so since they are kind enough to share gold open access, cool. Geology, Society of America, Self Schmid Mather. Continental flood basalt provinces are the subaerial expression of large igneous province volcanism. Isn't that like... Oh, okay. Continental subaerial expression of large igneous province. The emplacement of a continental flood basalt is an exceptional volcanic event in the geological history of our planet with the potential to directly impact Earth's atmosphere and environment. Large igneous province volcanism appears to have occurred episodically every 10 to 30 million years. Interesting. It's like the radioactive decay sequence through most of Earth's history. Although, I don't know about this statement. Although at the same time, pretty much most of Earth's history radiometrically is periods of change. Radiometrically, it almost captures no time of actual Earth's history. Like, it almost entirely is all just periods of change. So it would make sense that there was a lot of, like, episodic, because it's not actually 10 to 30 million years. This is more spontaneous events that just are painting a picture of that image. Most continental flood basalt provinces appear to have formed within 1 to 3 million years. Quickly. Just be like, boom. Continental flood basalt provinces. Most continental flood basalt provinces appear one or more pulses of great magma production and lava eruption took place. Okay. The majority. Let's just keep reading a little bit. Finish this here. Within these pulses, tens to hundreds of volumetrically large eruptions took place, each producing 10 to the third, 10 to the fourth cubed kilometers of predominantly Pehoho lava. Let's say Pehoho lava, so just like a fluid, smooth, ropey surface. Wow. The way it's just forming like a currents around it. Wow, I bet Pehoho lava flows are really revealing to how the Earth actually functions. It's pretty much like this, cutting through, but just vast quantities. Underneath the Earth, the crust at the Moho boundary. That's my thoughts. This is cutting through the Earth at the Moho crust boundary between the Moho and crust. And creating a space that, because it's pretty much just like a fluid, it's probably very porous once it kind of dries. Dries. That's interesting. In a way, it is drying out. It's cooling off, but it's also drying out. In a way. Just thinking of it as a water, like, I guess it's not drying out. If it's water, it's more freezing. Don't mind me when I think things that are wrong. Okay. Unprecedented amount of volcanic gases and ash into the atmosphere. The majority of magmatic gas species released had the potential to alter climate and/or atmospheric composition. In particular, during violent explosive phases at the eruptive vents, when volcanic gases were lofted into the stratosphere, aside from the direct release of magmatic gases, magma sediment interactions featured in some continental flood basalt provinces could have released additional carbon, sulfur, and halogen bearing species into the atmosphere. Despite their potential importance, given the different nature of the country rock associated with each continental flood basalt province, it is difficult to make generalizations about these emissions from one province to another. The coincidence of continental flood basalt volcanism with periods of major biotic change is well substantiated. It's just different conditions during the phases of the Earth's expansion. It's almost like it sounds like the way that they're like not able to be generalized is like it's radioactively decaying and emitting like subtly different particles. Sort of like how like certain atoms emit certain wavelengths. Like they're not the same emissions, they're different wavelengths. So we can generalize that they don't have the same characteristics across them because they're probably like different phases in the decay process of the Earth. Coincidence. Con. Despite their importance given the coincidence of continental flood basalt volcanism with periods of major, but the actual mechanisms by which the volcanic gases might have perturbed the environment to this extent are currently not well understood and have been little studied by means of atmospheric modeling. We summarize current, albeit rudimentary, knowledge of continental flood basalt eruption source and emplacement. I'm having some thoughts that are exciting. I'm like, it's probably related to the novas. Like, here's a nova. Here, a nova center here, a nova center here, a nova center here, but they're everywhere. Like, if we go to North America, especially, let's say, under Yellowstone, there's one there, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. There's one here, there's one here. They're hard to see sometimes because they're not quite, I'm not sure that they're technically supernovas. Like they are the same mechanic, but it really kind of sheds light onto what supernovas maybe really are because these are really just like drops almost from just the waves making like a colliding currents just exploding outward. I guess it is supernovas, but it's just such a different nature that it makes it more like oh. We summarize current, albeit rudimentary, knowledge of continental flood basalt eruption sources. We identify our limited knowledge of the number and length of non-eruptive phases, hiatuses during continental. Okay. Let's just find this now. This is really helpful. So we can kind of get an idea of what happened. Like, the current initially flowed, it looks like, both westward and northward, and maybe eastward. Not so, and some down here, I guess. Maybe not down this way yet. Like it had to struggle to get here. Some reason. Because it was pretty adjacent. It wasn't far. Like Oman is here. Or there. Oh Lord. Yeah, down here. Wait, that's Somalia. Oh. I want to know the geology of Somalia, not Oman. Also Oman, but Somalia. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I would love to help, but I really don't know what to do except keep trying this. I'm really just trying. What can I do? want to see some doctors who just fucking waste their fucking money. Give them fucking side effects. That's our solution. Here's some side effects. Here's some legalized drugs. Yeah, that'll work, right? Talk to you for 4 minutes. Thanks for the $200. Fucking, how backwards is this world? Fucking sham. That's what you guys want? You want a sham? Well, that's what you get then. Is a collapsing world. We're all just fucking steal from each other here. Well, same, I guess. Maybe I'm a sham, so you guys do you. Time will tell. That's all I can say. Time will tell. Anyway. Sure, maybe I can be more loving. And that maybe that is the problem, is I really need to just like hug it out. Literally hug the toxins out. Maybe. This is interesting. But back to what I was saying, this just gives us a good idea of when things happened. It looks like the current flowed across here, under here, down through here, and made it all the way to Western Australia before it met resistance, and then it started to show signs. Because it's also over here showing signs, but then it comes around this way. Under here even, I guess. So maybe it just comes under here and reaches this region where it starts to influence there. And here, like all this. And then this starts to like seep out. Around that time frame, it starts to open enough of a gap to start to actually flow over top Florida. It's coming across this way, so it would make sense to flow that way. And South America is actually positioned here at that point. And so if we go to here, it's here. So this current's coming down here, which is then it probably even because of this, like it's not just going down, it's also going up. Like it's doing both. Going on top here, creating this igneous province. But this one's not just there, it's also throughout here and here. So it's also, when it's doing this, it's also coming this way, getting down through here, which is also coming into Africa, but coming over top of this at this point, which I think is basically directly across from here, where this thing was, or maybe right there. Because this chunk, or it might be as high as here, because this does look more like the right size. Maybe it's probably as high as here. So here is actually what is missing, this piece of the undercrust, where it's just less material because it's up here. It's just missing. So I think it was also coming this way, maybe coming up over there. So maybe, where was that? Maybe that's what this is about. This region is coming up over there. And then it's also just coming over Africa a bit. Oh, Lord. This looks, it doesn't have a date. Maybe that's part of the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province. Then that would make sense, because this flow is general. Maybe this didn't happen until this current. Let's see if this current has like a 210, 17. So this one seems later. This like accretion. Da-da-da. Okay, wait. Just about all of Alaska has been accreted over the past 200 years. So pretty much since the resistance of the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province. So that's probably what was happening, was it was starting to meet some resistance in the flows, where like they were initially just flowing, just la la la, just out on top of the Moho and crustal boundary underneath the crust. Flowing, but then they started to meet resistance, which then caused them to upwell at the boundary points along the way, as well as to begin to just cause like accretions of this here. That makes sense. Maybe the resistance that it meant was the nucleus. Because the flow is essentially coming in this way, coming across here, and then maybe it just hits here, and like this nucleus that did not have this between it, like it was a full nucleus, stable system. It just causes maybe like a backflow that then just is like drilling through it. Just right through the nucleus, and then at that point it's a big wall here that's kind of stopping flow and causing it to flow back this way. So it's kind of holding the front, keeping the flow from just like cycling around and around in some way, like slowing down the currents so that they can equilibrate, if that's a word. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. 90, that's a little early. I would expect that to be more like 60. 120, like this makes sense pretty well. A little after the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, pretty much. Then the flows that were building up here, that were kind of causing pressure here, then venting here. Then they're also starting to build up down here and down here, leading to these ones. Maybe that. I think significantly covers these pretty well. It's just, I guess this was late to the scene. When did the East African Rift Zone timeline? It was late. Why would it be so late? Maybe it couldn't quite make it there until this nucleus was severed in half. And then the Earth expanded, then the currents could flow that way. Like something about before the Earth expanded, that maybe the geometry, like the currents were flowing more this way. Just blocking a current from coming this way, causing it more so just to go up that way completely, maybe, or just to flow with it back this way, even like maybe initially going this way. So there just wasn't a feed coming in the side until the Earth expanded, which was 66 million years. When the Earth really expanded, like it was expanding, but when the Earth supernova, the fast portion of the supernova was 66 million years. When that occurred, that probably was related to this decay of the crust nucleus, interestingly. Like, huh. Which then basically probably allowed for this to block any currents coming across. Maybe the currents stopped flowing from there, but they were still flowing here. So they were able to fill the space that they weren't able to fill beforehand, really. And there were still cross flows to a degree coming this way, I guess, because they still were able to cause the rift zone to like bounce, to vibrate down the whole way, like on two sides vibrating. So they must have had a cross current from here to a degree, or here, like just down the way, creating ripples here. But specific cross current, so it wasn't just ripples, it was like waves, wave, cross current, wave, cross current. Because these are being fed through like ammonite shell channels, naturally cause in South America to cause like specific points where they prefer to flow from channels. So it meets it through a channel rather than as like a continuous like so that kind of makes sense then. Okay, we can say that makes sense. 62. So this gap didn't open until after the Earth expanded. Which then probably allowed for this like nova center thing going on to energetically feed outward into Iceland in the same way as Gurnar was fed by this. These time frames are pretty good in terms of, I mean, maybe not. I'm sure these are more complex than we realize. Like, most materials here maybe are 31 to a point where we haven't seen maybe some stuff from this flow. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit in the region to a point where we could detect some stuff where maybe it's even debated and known about in some of these places where there's several things and it's hard to establish like an exact age because we're not realizing that it's a process like this occurring where there's currents that are maybe not always the same and throughout the process creating different like phases. Let's see. That looks like current flows too, really. Although that's in Washington. Maybe the whole Earth was just covered in current flows. Just subtle ones that at like emission points, like large igneous provinces, they just tend to have an exchange. Like it's not just an outflow; it's also pulling in material. It's like space to replace the void left behind within the Earth when it emits it. And so it pretty much just Is it? Yeah. Maybe it always produces like a current to a point where it shapes the outwelling to have a degree of like actual detectable presence of current in the rocks that float over top it like this. As it was being emitted, a current in the region, just like a storm. Maybe not the doom shape, but like a hurricane or something of that nature that just like forms by its emissions, allowing for currents to just cool it off. Pretty much just cooling it off, just an exchange of energy along. Okay, so I think we made some progress on Gujarat, on Deccan Traps, on a lot of things, probably. Maybe some backsteps in some ways of misstatements, misunderstandings, and probably intermixed in there. Just like the voids that got in, they essentially maybe form stable footings for time, but they're still voids. Oh. So, is it possible that there's a storm that went this way? This is oldest material to newest. Also, how new is that? If we look at it over there, I mean it's probably all comparable age over there. The problem is a lot of this is it's just such surface grain details it may not capture actual nuances there. Okay, well, I guess I'll get out of here until the next one. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope this helps in any way I can.